The baby wasn't his, but the name on the birth certificate made her his problem. When Lena Cross gave birth alone in a city hospital with nothing but debt and desperation, she thought the nightmare was ending. Then hospital administration told her the father's name was already registered, a name she'd never heard before. Minutes later, armed men in black suits sealed every exit. The man who walked through those doors wasn't the deadbeat who'd abandoned her. He was worse. Victor Moretti didn't come for the baby. He came for revenge. And now, Lena and her newborn daughter were caught in a war they never chose. If you want to know how a single lie turned into a family forged in blood and bullets, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in St. Catherine's Hospital flickered with the rhythm of Lena's fading consciousness. She'd been in labor for 19 hours, alone except for the rotating shift of nurses who checked her vitals with clinical detachment. No family, no friends, no partner, just her, a hospital gown that barely covered her dignity, and the relentless contractions that felt like her body was trying to turn itself inside out. When her daughter finally came into the world at 3:47 a.m., Lena didn't hear angels singing or feel overwhelming maternal joy. She heard her own ragged breathing and felt the absolute terror of knowing she had $37 in her checking account and nowhere to take this tiny, perfect creature who was now screaming her lungs out. "Congratulations," the obstetrician said, placing the baby on Lena's chest. "She's healthy, strong lungs." Lena looked down at the wrinkled, furious face of her daughter and felt her heart crack open in a way she hadn't known was possible. Love and panic flooded through her in equal measure. She'd spent 9 months pretending she had a plan, but the truth was simpler and more terrifying. She had absolutely nothing. The baby's father, Marcus, or so he'd called himself during their brief, stupid, whiskey-soaked encounter 10 months ago, had vanished the moment she'd texted him the positive pregnancy test. Blocked her number. Disappeared like smoke. She'd tried to find him, spent weeks searching social media, asking around the bar where they'd met, but it was like he'd never existed at all. Now, holding this fragile life against her chest, Lena realized she'd been living in denial. She had no job, fired from the diner 3 months ago when morning sickness made her useless. No apartment, evicted 2 weeks before her due date. She'd been sleeping in her car, showering at the gym, eating whatever she could shoplift or afford. The hospital social worker had already started making noises about temporary foster care and getting back on your feet. "Ms. Cross?" A different nurse appeared, older, with kind eyes that somehow made everything worse. "We need to complete some paperwork." Lena nodded, too exhausted to speak. The baby had latched onto her breast with surprising ferocity, and despite everything, despite the complete disaster her life had become, she felt a fierce protective instinct rising up from somewhere deep and primal. The nurse pulled up a chair beside the bed, tablet in hand. "I just need to verify some information. Your full name is Lena Marie Cross, correct?" "Yes." "Date of birth, March 14th, 1998? "Yes." "And the father's information?" The nurse's voice trailed off, her expression shifting to confusion. She tapped the screen several times, frowning. "That's odd." "What's odd?" Lena's arms tightened around her daughter instinctively. "The father's information was already entered into the system before you arrived at the hospital." Lena's blood went cold. "That's impossible. I never filled out any forms. I came through the emergency entrance during labor. I barely remember giving you my own name." The nurse's frown deepened. She turned the tablet around, showing Lena the screen. There, in official hospital database formatting, was information that shouldn't exist. Father, Victor Adrian Moretti. Contact, restricted. Emergency authorization, active legal status, recognized guardian. "I don't understand," Lena whispered. "I've never heard that name in my life." According to this, the information was submitted 6 hours ago by a legal representative. There's a court order attached granting parental rights, and the nurse stopped abruptly, her face going pale as she read further. "Ms. Cross, I need to get the hospital administrator, right now." "Wait, what's happening? Who is Victor Moretti?" But the nurse was already moving toward the door, her professional composure cracking around the edges. "Just stay calm. Don't leave this room." "Don't leave?" Lena looked down at her daughter, still nursing peacefully, oblivious to the chaos. Where exactly did they think she could go? She couldn't even stand up without help. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Lena watched the clock, her mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Some kind of identity theft, a bureaucratic mistake? But the detail in those forms, the legal language, the court orders, that wasn't a clerical error. The door opened. The hospital administrator entered first, a thin man in his 50s whose expensive suit looked uncomfortable on his nervous frame. Behind him came 2 security guards, which was already strange enough. But what made Lena's heart stop was the third man. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples. His suit probably cost more than Lena had earned in the past year. Everything about him radiated control, from his measured stride to the way he scanned the room with cold, assessing eyes. But it was his face that truly frightened her. Handsome, yes, in a brutal, carved-from-granite way, but utterly devoid of warmth. This was a man who'd looked at violence and felt nothing. "Ms. Cross," the administrator said, his voice shaking slightly, "this is Mr. Moretti. He has legal documentation establishing paternity, and I've never met this man in my life," Lena interrupted, pulling the blanket tighter around her daughter. "This is insane. Call the police." The administrator exchanged glances with the security guards, who suddenly looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Victor Moretti hadn't moved from his position near the door, but his presence filled the room like a physical force. "Perhaps we could speak privately," Moretti said. His voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle, which somehow made him more terrifying. "Ms. Cross and I have matters to discuss that don't concern the rest of you." "Hospital policy requires," the administrator began. "I'm aware of hospital policy." Moretti reached into his jacket. Everyone in the room tensed and produced a leather document folder. "I'm also aware that my legal team has provided every necessary authorization. Unless you'd like to discuss this matter further with Judge Castellano, I suggest you give us privacy." The administrator's face went from pale to gray. He recognized the judge's name. Everyone in the city knew Judge Castellano, and everyone knew he didn't make rulings that could be appealed or ignored. "5 minutes, the administrator managed. "We'll be right outside." They fled. Actually fled, like soldiers retreating from a battlefield. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a prison lock in the sudden silence. Lena held her daughter so tightly, the baby made a small noise of protest. "Stay away from us." Moretti moved then, but not toward her. He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights spreading across the pre-dawn darkness. "The man you knew as Marcus Reed, that wasn't his real name. His real name is Daniel Cross. Your distant cousin, though I doubt you knew that." Lena's mind reeled. "I don't have any cousins. My family—" "Your father's side. A strange branch. Daniel specialized in creating false identities, forging documents, and apparently seducing women for reasons I'm still investigating." Moretti's tone remained conversational, like he was discussing the weather. "3 months ago, Daniel stole something from me. Something valuable. Then he disappeared." "What does that have to do with my daughter?" Moretti turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something besides cold calculation in his expression. Anger, yes, but also something that looked almost like regret. "Daniel knew he was a dead man the moment he betrayed me, so he created insurance. He forged documents establishing me as the father of his child, your child. He knew I'd eventually trace the paperwork, knew I'd find you and the baby. He was counting on my reputation to protect you both from the people he actually stole from." "You're insane," Lena whispered. "This is insane." "Yes," Moretti agreed simply. "But it's also true. And now we both have a problem, Ms. Cross. We don't have anything. I don't know you. You're not this baby's father. Those documents are fraudulent. I'll testify to that. You'll do exactly that, and you'll be dead within 48 hours. Moretti's voice hardened. "The people Daniel stole from aren't interested in legal technicalities. They want revenge. They want blood. And right now the official records show that you gave birth to my daughter. That makes you part of my world whether you chose it or not." Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So what? You're here to kill us? To finish whatever sick game this Daniel person started?" Something flickered across Moretti's face. Surprise, maybe, or offense. "I don't kill women and children, Miss Cross. Despite what you may have heard about me, I do have principles." "Then what do you want?" Moretti was quiet for a long moment, his gaze shifting to the baby in her arms. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its edge. "I want to solve this problem in a way that keeps you both alive. The people Daniel betrayed, They're not like me. They're animals. They'll torture you for information you don't have, kill your daughter just to hurt you, and leave your bodies in pieces as a message. Lena's arms trembled. The baby, sensing her mother's distress, began to fuss. I'm offering you protection, Moretti continued. You come with me. You and the child live in my home under my security until this situation is resolved. In exchange, you cooperate with the official story that this child is mine, that you're under my protection, that anyone who touches you answers to me. That's not protection. That's imprisonment. Call it whatever you like, but you'll be alive. Moretti moved toward the door, then paused. You have until noon to decide. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. Hospital security is inadequate, and word is already spreading about the birth certificate. My enemies move fast, and if I refuse, Moretti looked at her with something that might have been pity, then I leave you to face them alone. You'll last maybe 2 days on the street with a newborn, less if they're motivated. He opened the door, and the administrator practically stumbled back into the room. Ms. Cross will be checking out this morning, Moretti said calmly. See that all discharge paperwork is expedited. Send the bills to my office. Of course, Mr. Moretti, right away. Moretti left without looking back, his security detail materializing from nowhere to follow him down the corridor. The administrator wrung his hands, clearly torn between protocol and terror. Ms. Cross, if there's been any coercion, if you need help, just leave, Lena said tiredly. Please, just leave me alone. When the room finally emptied, Lena looked down at her daughter, who had fallen back asleep, tiny fists curled against her chest. In the soft light filtering through the blinds, she looked so peaceful, so innocent, so completely unaware that her existence had just made her mother a target in someone else's war. Lena had 5 hours to decide. 5 hours to figure out if Victor Moretti was a devil offering salvation or just another monster wearing a different mask. A nurse brought breakfast at 7. Lena couldn't eat, but she forced herself to drink the orange juice. The baby woke hungry, and Lena fed her, marveling at how such a tiny creature could have such a powerful grip on both her breast and her heart. Have you thought of a name? The nurse asked, trying to make conversation. Lena hadn't. She'd been too scared to name something she wasn't sure she could keep. But looking at her daughter now, one name surfaced from the chaos of her thoughts. Arya, she said softly. Her name is Arya. That's beautiful. It means air or song, doesn't it? Melody, Lena corrected. It means melody. At 8:30, a different visitor arrived, a woman in her 40s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes and a leather briefcase. She introduced herself as Sophia Chen, attorney. I represent Mr. Moretti, she said, settling into the chair beside Lena's bed without waiting for invitation. He asked me to explain your situation in legal terms. I don't need a lawyer. I need this nightmare to end. Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Those are the same thing, Miss Cross. Let me be frank. The documents naming Mr. Moretti as Arya's father are legally binding unless contested in court. That process would take months, during which time you'd be vulnerable to the individuals seeking revenge against Daniel Cross. So I'm trapped. You're protected, Chen corrected. There's a difference, mister. Moretti is offering you sanctuary, not ownership. You'll have your own quarters in his estate, full-time security, financial support, and medical care for Arya. In exchange, you maintain the public fiction of your relationship until the threat is neutralized. What relationship? We're strangers. Publicly, you're the mother of his child. That's enough. Chen pulled papers from her briefcase. This is a contract outlining the terms of your arrangement. Room and board, monthly stipend, healthcare, education fund for Arya. In exchange, you agree not to dispute the paternity documentation and to reside under Mr. Moretti's protection for a minimum of 6 months. Lena scanned the contract, her mind struggling to process the numbers. The monthly stipend alone was more than she'd earned in half a year at the diner. What happens after 6 months? Renegotiation, or separation if the threat has been eliminated. Mr. Moretti is a practical man, Ms. Cross. He's not interested in forcing unwilling people into his life. He's interested in solving problems. And I'm a problem. You're a complication created by someone else's betrayal. Mr. Moretti takes responsibility for complications that occur in his orbit, whether he caused them or not. It's part of his code. Lena laughed bitterly. His code? The crime boss with principles. Chen's expression didn't change. You're young, and you've clearly had a difficult time. I understand your skepticism, but let me make something absolutely clear. The people hunting Daniel Cross are not bound by any code. They'll find you whether you accept Mr. Moretti's protection or not. Your choice is between a comfortable prison and a violent death. Choose wisely. She stood, leaving the contract on the bedside table. Mr. Moretti will be back at noon. Have your decision ready. Chum. Lena spent the next hours in a fog of exhaustion and fear. She tried to think rationally, to see another option, any option that didn't involve putting herself and Arya in the hands of a man whose name made hospital administrators shake. But every scenario ended the same way, her and Arya alone, defenseless, hunted. She thought about running, taking Arya and disappearing. But where? She had no money, no resources, no safe place to go. And if Moretti could find her in a hospital, if Daniel could forge documents sophisticated enough to fool the legal system, how long would it take these mysterious enemies to track her down? At 11:45, Lena signed the contract. At noon exactly, Moretti returned. This time he came alone, dressed more casually in dark slacks and a black sweater that did nothing to make him less intimidating. You signed, he observed, picking up the contract. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices, Ms. Cross. You made the smart one. He folded the contract precisely, sliding it into his jacket pocket. My car is waiting. Can you walk? I'm not an invalid. You gave birth 12 hours ago. It's not weakness to accept help. Lena wanted to argue, but the truth was standing made her dizzy. She'd lost more blood than the doctors liked, and they'd wanted to keep her another day for observation. But Moretti's presence had overruled their medical judgment. He gestured toward the door. Two women entered, not nurses, but clearly professional caregivers. They helped Lena into a wheelchair without asking permission, their movements efficient and practiced. Where's Arya? Lena demanded. Already secured in the car seat, properly installed, safety checked twice. She's fine. The precision of it, the preparation, the assumption that Lena would comply, should have angered her. Instead, it just made her feel small. Moretti had orchestrated this entire situation, down to the last detail, while she'd spent the hours agonizing over a decision that had already been made for her. The hospital corridors were eerily empty as they made their way to the exit. Moretti walked slightly ahead, his posture relaxed but his eyes constantly scanning. Whatever he saw in those empty hallways satisfied him because he nodded once to himself. The car waiting at the loading dock wasn't what Lena expected. She'd pictured something ostentatious, a limousine maybe, or some ridiculous luxury sedan. Instead, it was a black SUV with tinted windows, armored if the way it sat on its suspension was any indication. Two more SUVs idled in formation, one in front and one behind. Arya was indeed already strapped into a car seat that probably cost more than Lena's old vehicle. The baby was awake, staring at nothing with that unfocused newborn gaze that seemed to see everything and nothing at once. Lena climbed into the back seat beside her daughter, her body screaming in protest at every movement. Moretti slid in from the other side, maintaining careful distance. The estate is 40 minutes outside the city, he said as the convoy began to move. You'll have your own wing, bedroom, bathroom, sitting room. There's a nursery adjacent, already stocked with everything Arya might need. If something's missing, tell Rosa. She manages the household staff. Lena nodded numbly, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. She'd lived here her entire life, but suddenly it felt foreign, like she was leaving the only world she'd ever known and entering something else entirely. The staff has been briefed, Moretti continued. They know you're under my protection. They won't ask questions and they won't gossip. Discretion is a requirement of employment in my home. Your home, Lena repeated. Not mine. For now, Moretti acknowledged. Though I hope you'll come to see it differently. They drove in silence after that. Lena watched Arya sleep, memorizing every detail of her daughter's face. The small nose, the dark hair that might lighten or might stay dark, the way her mouth moved in her sleep like she was tasting dreams. She looks like you, Moretti said suddenly. Lena glanced at him, surprised. He was looking at Arya with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not love, they were strangers to each other. But something softer than she'd expected. Interest, maybe, or curiosity. You don't have children, Lena guessed. No. But you know how to install a car seat. I know how to do a lot of things, Ms. Cross. Adaptation is survival. The city gave way to suburbs, which gave way to rural estates separated by acres of manicured land. The convoy turned onto a private road, passing through gates that opened automatically. The estate itself was sprawling, a main house that looked like it belonged in a European countryside, surrounded by carefully landscaped grounds, and what Lena suspected were strategic security installations disguised as garden features. "This is insane," she muttered. "This is safe," Moretti corrected. "There's a difference." The SUVs stopped at the main entrance where a woman in her 60s waited. She had steel-gray hair pulled into a neat bun and the kind of face that could be stern or kind depending on the angle. "This is Rosa," Moretti said, helping Lena from the vehicle with surprising gentleness. "She's been with my family for 30 years. If you need anything, ask her." Rosa's expression softened when she saw Arya. "Oh, she's precious. Come inside, dear. You look ready to collapse." Lena wanted to argue, but Rosa was right. Adrenaline had carried her this far, but now it was draining away, leaving nothing but bone-deep exhaustion. The inside of the house was as impressive as the outside. Marble floors, high ceilings, art that was probably worth more than Lena's entire life. But Rosa didn't give her time to gawk. She led them through corridors to a wing that was somehow both luxurious and comfortable. "Your rooms," Rosa announced, opening double doors. "Bedroom, bathroom, sitting area. The nursery's through here. I took the liberty of preparing bottles. I wasn't sure if you were nursing." "I am," Lena said. "But bottles might be good too." "Of course. You'll want rest. Mr. Moretti's wing is in the opposite direction. You won't be disturbed. I'll bring dinner at 7 unless you prefer earlier." Lena sank into an armchair that felt like a cloud. "Whatever's easiest." Rosa smiled, the first genuine warmth Lena had seen since this nightmare began. "You're not a prisoner here, dear. You're a guest. Start thinking like one." When she left, Moretti lingered in the doorway. "The grounds are secure. Armed guards, cameras, sensors. Nothing gets in or out without my knowledge. You're safe here." "Am I?" Lena met his eyes. "Because I feel like I've traded one trap for another." Moretti's expression hardened. "Daniel Cross made you part of this war. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to see the end of it. If that feels like a trap, then you don't understand how much worse the alternative would be." He left without waiting for a response. Lena sat there, holding Arya, feeling the weight of her new reality settle around her like chains made of silk and steel. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over grounds that stretched as far as she could see. Beautiful, isolated, safe. Prison. The first night in Victor Moretti's estate, Lena didn't sleep. She lay in a bed so soft it felt like floating, staring at the ceiling while Arya breathed peacefully in the bassinet beside her. Every sound made her jump, the wind against the windows, the settling of the old house, footsteps in distant corridors that might have been guards, or might have been ghosts. When dawn finally broke through the heavy curtains, Lena felt like she'd survived something, though she couldn't name what. Rosa arrived at 7 with a breakfast tray that could have fed 4 people. Eggs, toast, fruit, yogurt, orange juice, coffee. She set it on the sitting room table and surveyed Lena with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades reading people. "You didn't sleep," Rosa observed. "How could you tell?" 30 years in this house teaches you to recognize exhaustion. Eat. You're nursing. You need the calories. Lena wanted to argue, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. She picked at the eggs while Rosa moved to the bassinet, making soft cooing sounds at Arya. "She's beautiful," Rosa said. "Strong lungs when she's hungry. I noticed around 4 this morning." "I'm sorry if we disturbed anyone," Rosa laughed, a warm sound that seemed out of place in this cold mansion. "Dear, Mr. Moretti's wing is on the opposite side of the house. And even if it wasn't, babies cry. It's what they do. No apologies necessary." "Does he—" Lena hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. "Does Mr. Moretti usually bring women here?" Rosa's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. "Mr. Moretti values his privacy. What I can tell you is that in all my years here, you're the first woman who stayed in these particular rooms. He had them prepared specifically for you and Arya." That information settled uneasily in Lena's stomach. She'd assumed this was routine for him. Acquire a problem, store it somewhere secure, forget about it. But if he'd prepared rooms, stocked a nursery, made arrangements, that suggested something more deliberate, more personal. What does he expect from me? Lena asked quietly. Rosa sat down across from her, her weathered hands folded in her lap. That's a question you'll need to ask him yourself. But if you want my opinion, and you didn't, but I'm giving it anyway, I think he expects you to survive, to take care of your daughter, to accept protection without fighting it at every turn. Beyond that? She shrugged. Mr. Moretti keeps his own counsel. A soft knock interrupted them. One of the security guards stood in the doorway, young, muscular, with the kind of alert posture that suggested military training. Miss Cross, Mr. Moretti requests your presence in his study when you're ready. No rush. Lena's heart rate spiked. Did he say why? Just that you should bring Arya. Rosa will show you the way. He left before Lena could respond. She looked at Rosa, who was already standing, smoothing her apron. Finish eating first, Rosa said firmly. Mr. Moretti can wait 5 minutes. And change if you'd like. There are clothes in the closet. I took the liberty of estimating your size. The closet was full of clothes that definitely weren't hers. Simple, comfortable pieces that looked expensive but not showy. Jeans that fit perfectly. Soft sweaters. Practical shoes. Lena chose dark jeans and a gray sweater, feeling strange putting on clothes that someone else had selected for her body. When she was ready, Rosa led her through the mansion's corridors. In daylight, the house was less intimidating but more confusing. Hallways branched in unexpected directions. Rooms opened onto rooms. Artwork hung on every wall. Some of it beautiful, some of it disturbing, all of it probably worth a fortune. How big is this place? Lena asked. 23 rooms, not counting staff quarters. Mr. Moretti's grandfather built it in the 50s when the family first came to America. It's been expanded twice since then. They stopped at a heavy wooden door. Rosa knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. The study was darker than the rest of the house, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and furniture that looked like it predated electricity. Victor Moretti sat behind a massive desk, reading something on a tablet. He looked up when they entered, his expression unreadable. Ms. Cross, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Always. The choice might not be pleasant, but it exists. He gestured to the chairs facing his desk. Please sit. Lena sat, adjusting Arya in her arms. The baby was awake, staring at the ceiling with that intense focus newborns sometimes achieved. Moretti's gaze shifted to Arya, and again Lena saw that strange softness in his expression. How was your first night? He asked. Sleepless, uncomfortable, terrifying. Should I go on? Honest. I appreciate that. He set the tablet aside, giving her his full attention. I asked you here because we need to establish some ground rules, not restrictions, clarifications. What's the difference? Restrictions would be me telling you where you can and can't go, what you can and can't do. Clarifications are me explaining the reality of your situation so you can make informed decisions. He leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. You're free to move anywhere within the estate grounds. The house, the gardens, the pool area. There are guards, but they're there to keep threats out, not to keep you in. And if I want to leave, then you leave. But I'd ask that you tell me first so I can arrange appropriate security. The people hunting Daniel Cross aren't interested in boundaries or fair play. If you leave this property without protection, you're exposing yourself and Arya to significant danger. Lena shifted Arya to her other arm. You keep saying these people are hunting Daniel, but I don't know anything. I can't help them, even if I wanted to. They don't care what you know. They care about sending a message. Daniel made them look weak when he stole from them. Killing his child, even a child he abandoned, would restore their reputation. Moretti's voice remained calm, factual, like he was explaining weather patterns instead of murder. Your ignorance doesn't protect you. It just makes you an easier target. So I'm bait. No, you're collateral damage waiting to happen unless I prevent it. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer, sliding it across to her. This is everything I've learned about Daniel Cross in the past week. Read it if you want. Or don't. But understanding who created this situation might help you understand why I'm taking it seriously. Lena opened the folder with her free hand. Inside were photographs, surveillance images of a man she barely recognized. Marcus, or Daniel, or whatever his name was. But these photos showed him in contexts she'd never imagined. Meeting with men in expensive suits. Entering buildings that looked like the kind of places where illegal business happened. carrying briefcases that probably didn't contain legitimate documents. "He was one of yours," she said slowly. "Wasn't he?" "For 3 years, document forger, identity specialist. Very good at what he did. Too good, it turned out. He got ambitious." "What did he steal?" Moretti was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. "Information. Client lists, financial records, operational details that could destroy half the power structure in this city if they became public. He planned to sell it to the highest bidder and disappear, but he underestimated how quickly I'd realize what happened." "So you're going to kill him?" "I'm going to find him. What happens after that depends on what he does with the information he stole." Moretti's expression hardened. "But that's not your problem, Ms. Cross. Your problem is staying alive while I deal with mine." Arya chose that moment to start fussing, her small face scrunching up in preparation for a full cry. Lena stood automatically, rocking her, but the baby's distress was escalating. "She's probably hungry," Lena said. "I should take her back. Feed her here if you'd like. I'll turn around if it makes you more comfortable." The offer surprised her. She'd expected dismissal, not accommodation. Lena hesitated, then settled back into the chair, arranging her sweater to nurse Arya. Moretti did turn around, facing the window that overlooked his manicured grounds. "I have a daughter," he said suddenly. "Had. She died when she was 6 months old." Lena froze. "I'm sorry." "It was 15 years ago, a car accident. My wife was driving." His voice remained steady, but something in his posture shifted, a tightness in his shoulders, a rigidity in his spine. "They told me she didn't suffer. I've never believed that. How could a 6-month-old understand why her mother wasn't responding, why the world was ending in metal and glass?" "Is that why you—" Lena trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Why I what? Why I didn't kill you and Arya when Daniel's plan first surfaced? Why I'm housing you instead of using you as leverage?" He turned back around, and his eyes were different now, older, haunted. "Maybe, or maybe I just know what it's like to hold something that small and understand how easily the world can destroy it." Arya had latched on and was nursing peacefully. Moretti's gaze dropped to her, then quickly away, like the sight caused him physical pain. "My wife's name was Elena," he continued. "Our daughter was Sophia. After they died, I told myself I'd never be vulnerable like that again. Love makes you weak, makes you hesitate, makes you human in ways that get you killed in my world. And yet here I am. Yes, here you are. A complication I should eliminate but won't. Draw your own conclusions about what that means." Lena met his eyes across the desk. "It means you're not the monster everyone thinks you are. Don't mistake one moment of humanity for redemption, Ms. Cross. I've done things that would make you sick. I've hurt people, killed people, destroyed lives to protect my interests. The fact that I'm choosing not to hurt you doesn't make me good. It just makes me tired." The admission hung between them like a confession. Lena didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. They sat in silence while Arya nursed, the only sounds the ticking of an antique clock and the baby's soft, satisfied noises. Finally, Moretti stood. "That's all I wanted to discuss. You're free to go. Rosa will show you the rest of the house if you're interested. There's a library on the second floor, a gym in the east wing, gardens if you feel like walking. Make yourself at home." "This isn't my home." "Not yet," he agreed, "but it could be, if you let it." Lena gathered Arya and stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "The people hunting Daniel. When you find him, when this is over, what happens to us?" Moretti's expression was impossible to read. "That depends on what you want to happen. You signed a 6-month contract. After that, you're free to leave with full financial support. Or you can stay, if the arrangement suits you. The choice will be yours." "Will it? Or will there be another crisis? Another reason I can't leave? I don't keep people who don't want to be kept, Miss Cross. When you're ready to go, I'll let you go. You have my word." The word of a crime boss. The word of a man who lost his daughter and won't use another child as a chess piece. He turned back to his desk, dismissing her. Even monsters have limits. Lena left before he could see the tears in her eyes. She didn't know if she was crying for him, for his dead daughter, or for herself and the impossible situation she couldn't escape. Rosa was waiting in the hallway, her expression knowing. "Come." I'll show you the gardens. Fresh air will do you both good. The gardens were extensive, acres of carefully maintained grounds with walking paths, fountains, and secluded benches. Guards were visible at the perimeter, but they kept their distance, giving the illusion of privacy. Lena walked slowly, her body still recovering from childbirth, while Rosa pointed out various features. Mr. Moretti's wife designed these gardens, Rosa said. Elena had a gift for making beautiful things. After she died, he kept everything exactly as she'd planned it. Even the seasonal flowers. We plant what she would have wanted. That's sad. Or romantic, depending on how you look at it. Mr. Moretti doesn't do anything halfway. When he loves completely. When he grieves completely. When he protects... Rosa glanced at Lena. Well, you're experiencing that firsthand. They stopped at a fountain featuring a bronze sculpture of a woman holding a child. The detail was breathtaking, the tender curve of the woman's back, the child's small hand reaching for her face. Lena felt something twist in her chest. Elena? She guessed. And Sophia. He commissioned it 2 years after they died. Took the sculptor 9 months to complete. Mr. Moretti supervised every detail. Lena looked at the statue, then down at Aria in her arms. What kind of man built monuments to loss while building walls against connection? What kind of man saved strangers while mourning the family he couldn't save? Rosa, what does he really want from me? Rosa was quiet for a long moment, studying the fountain. I think he wants to save you. Not because he needs to, but because he couldn't save them. I think every time he looks at Aria, he sees Sophia. Every time he ensures your safety, he's rewriting history, giving himself the chance to protect what he lost. She met Lena's eyes. That's not your responsibility to heal him, mind you, but it might help you understand why a man who should see you as a problem treats you like something precious. That night, Lena had dinner brought to her room. She wasn't ready to face Moretti again, wasn't ready to navigate the complicated emotions their morning conversation had stirred up. Rosa brought the tray herself, along with news. Mr. Moretti will be away for a few days, business in the city. He wanted me to tell you that security will be doubled in his absence, but you shouldn't worry. Should I be worried that he thinks I might worry? Rosa smiled. He's cautious. It's kept him alive this long. She paused at the door. Oh, and he left something for Aria in the nursery. He said you could throw it away if you preferred. After Rosa left, Lena went into the nursery. On the changing table sat a small music box, intricately carved wood with delicate metalwork. She wound it carefully, and a gentle melody filled the room, a lullaby she didn't recognize but that felt immediately familiar, like something remembered from a dream. Tucked inside was a note in precise handwriting. Elena used to sing this to Sophia. I thought Aria might like it. V. Lena stood there, holding the music box, feeling the weight of a dead woman's lullaby and a broken man's gesture of, what? Kindness, manipulation, hope? She didn't throw it away. The next 3 days passed in a strange rhythm. Lena cared for Aria, explored the house, avoided thinking too hard about her situation. Rosa became a constant presence, not intrusive, but there whenever Lena needed something. The guards remained professional and distant. The house staff went about their business like Lena was just another piece of furniture. On the 4th day, Moretti returned. Lena was in the library when she heard the cars arrive. She'd discovered the library on her 2nd day and had been returning every afternoon while Aria napped. The room was 2 stories tall with a spiral staircase leading to a 2nd-level balcony. Books lined every wall, classics, contemporary fiction, histories, technical manuals. Someone in this house was an actual reader, and Lena suspected it wasn't the guards. She was curled in a leather armchair with a novel she'd found when Moretti appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. But he smiled when he saw her. I'm glad someone's using this room. Most of these books haven't been touched in years. They're yours? My father's mostly. He believed education was power. Made me read 4 books a month from the time I was 8. Moretti moved to the shelves, running his fingers along the spines with obvious affection. I hated it then. Appreciate it now. Did your business go well? His smile faded, as well as could be expected. We have a lead on Daniel's location. My people are tracking it down. And the people he stole from? Getting impatient, making noise about retribution. Nothing concrete yet, but they're posturing. He pulled a book from the shelf, something thick and leather-bound. How has Aria been? Perfect. Terrible. Both. She's a baby. The music box, did she like it? Lena set her novel aside. We listen to it every night before bed. It calms her down when nothing else works. Something in Moretti's expression eased. Good, that's good. He hesitated, then asked, Have you been comfortable? Is there anything you need? Why do you care? The question came out harder than Lena intended, but she was tired of dancing around the truth, tired of pretending this situation made sense. Moretti closed the book and returned it to the shelf. That's a fair question. The honest answer is, I don't know. Logically, you're a liability. Keeping you here exposes me to risk, ties up resources, creates complications I don't need. But when I think about sending you away, about letting you face this alone, he trailed off, his jaw tight. I can't do it. Whether that's weakness or humanity, I haven't decided. What if I told you I want to leave? Then I'd ask why. And if your reasons were sound, I'd help you leave safely. Just like that? Just like that. He met her eyes. I meant what I said, Miss Cross. I don't keep people who don't want to be kept. If staying here feels like dying slowly, then go. But if you're just scared of staying, of accepting help, of letting someone protect you after you've been alone for so long. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Then maybe give it more than 4 days before you decide. Lena's heart was racing. He was too close, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried that had nothing to do with physical burdens. I don't know what you want from me, she whispered. Neither do I, he admitted. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we're both figuring this out as we go. A cry from the nursery shattered the moment. Arya, awake and hungry. Lena stood quickly, needing the excuse to move, to breathe, to think. I should go, Moretti said. Take care of your daughter. We can talk more later. Or not. Whatever you need. Lena fled the library, her mind spinning. In the nursery, she picked up Arya and held her close, feeling the solid reality of her daughter against the confusion of everything else. What did Victor Moretti want? What did she want? And why did staying in his house feel less like imprisonment and more like something she couldn't name but desperately feared? That night, as the music box played Elena's lullaby and Arya drifted off to sleep, Lena made a decision. She wouldn't run. Not yet. Not until she understood what this strange arrangement was becoming. But she also wouldn't let herself forget that kindness from dangerous men was still dangerous. Protection could become possession. Safety could become a cage. And Victor Moretti, for all his grief and gentleness with her daughter, was still the kind of man who built empires on violence. She just had to remember that before she made the mistake of forgetting. The weather turned cold overnight, autumn surrendering to early winter. Lena woke to frost on the windows and Arya's angry cries demanding breakfast. She'd been at the estate for 2 weeks now, and some mornings she almost forgot this wasn't her real life. Almost forgot that outside these walls, people wanted her dead for crimes she didn't commit. Rosa brought coffee and the morning newspaper, setting both on the sitting room table with her usual efficiency. Mr. Moretti would like you to join him for lunch today, in the solarium at noon. Is that a request or an order? With Mr. Moretti, there's rarely a difference. Rosa's expression softened. But he did say to tell you he has news about Daniel Cross. Lena's stomach nodded. She'd been avoiding thinking about Daniel, about the threat he represented. It was easier to focus on Arya's feeding schedule, on exploring the library, on pretending this was just an extended vacation in someone else's mansion. What kind of news? He didn't say, but he seemed tense when he asked me to arrange it. After Rosa left, Lena fed Arya and tried to prepare herself for whatever Victor Moretti considered newsworthy. In 2 weeks, their interactions had been limited and carefully polite. He'd stop by the nursery occasionally, always knocking first, always keeping his distance. Sometimes he'd just watch Arya sleep for a few minutes, that haunted expression on his face. Other times he'd ask Lena about her day, about whether she needed anything, about nothing in particular. They were dancing around something neither of them wanted to name. The solarium was on the south side of the house, a glass-enclosed room filled with plants and winter sunlight. Moretti was already there when Lena arrived with Arya, standing by the windows with his phone pressed to his ear. He gestured for her to sit, finishing his conversation in Italian. Lena caught enough words to know it wasn't a pleasant discussion. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Thank you for coming. Rosa said you had news. I do. Some good, some complicated. He sat across from her, his usual controlled posture slightly off. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well. We found Daniel Cross. He's in Montreal, hiding in a safe house owned by an associate of his buyers. My people have him under surveillance. Lena's heart rate spiked. So this is over? You can get whatever he stole back? It's not that simple. Daniel doesn't have the information anymore. He already sold it to the Kozlov family, Russian organized crime with operations throughout Eastern Europe and North America. They paid him $2 million for client lists and operational details that could dismantle half my business relationships. Then why hasn't he run further? Why stay in Montreal? Moretti's jaw tightened. Because the Kozlovs are the people I told you about, the ones who want revenge. Apparently Daniel's been negotiating with them, offering additional information in exchange for protection. He told them about the birth certificate, about you and Arya. He's using you as proof of his value, evidence that he can manipulate my organization from the inside. The room felt suddenly cold despite the sunlight. So they know where we are. They know you exist. They don't know where you are yet. This estate isn't listed in my name, and I've kept your presence here completely off any official records. But it's only a matter of time before they connect the dots. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Which is why I need to move against them now before they move against us. What does that mean? It means war, Ms. Cross. Open conflict with a family that has resources comparable to mine. It means violence, casualties, and a level of chaos that will put everyone in this house at risk. Lena held Arya tighter. You're telling me this is my fault? That because Daniel used my name, because he got me pregnant, I'm the reason you're going to war? No. Moretti's voice was sharp. I'm telling you this is Daniel's fault. He created this situation. He weaponized your existence. But the Kozlovs would have come for me eventually. The information Daniel sold them guaranteed that. You're not the cause. You're just the excuse they're using to justify acceleration. That's a distinction without a difference. Maybe. But it matters to me that you understand I don't blame you. He stood, pacing to the windows. I've been planning for this confrontation since the moment I discovered Daniel's theft. The Kozlovs want to use the information he sold them to expand into territories I control. They want my supply chains, my political connections, my market share. This was always going to end in blood. The question was timing. And now? Now I have no choice. They know about Arya. If I show weakness, if I fail to respond to the implicit threat, they'll interpret it as vulnerability. They'll come after you and her to prove I can't protect my own family. And once they establish that precedent, he trailed off. But Lena understood the implication. So what happens to us? Moretti turned back to face her. You stay here. Security is being tripled starting today. I'm bringing in specialists, former military, the best defensive team money can buy. This estate becomes a fortress. No one gets in or out without my explicit approval. That sounds like a prison. It's the only way I can guarantee your safety while I handle the Kozlovs. His expression was unreadable. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you didn't choose any of this, but I'm asking you to trust me for a few more weeks. Let me end this threat permanently so you and Arya can have a real life again. Lena looked down at her daughter, who was staring at the plants with fascinated baby intensity. What if you can't end it? What if this war you're talking about just creates more problems, more enemies, more reasons I can't ever leave? Then I'll have failed, and you'll be free to make whatever choice you want, with enough money to disappear anywhere in the world. Moretti moved closer, crouching so he was eye level with her. But I don't plan to fail, Ms. Cross. I've been fighting men like the Kozlovs my entire life. They think information and money make them powerful. They're wrong. Power is understanding what you're willing to sacrifice and what you'll destroy to protect. And what are you willing to sacrifice? Everything, he said simply, except you and Arya. The intensity in his eyes made Lena's breath catch. This wasn't just about obligation anymore, wasn't just about guilt over his dead daughter. Something had shifted in the past 2 weeks. Something neither of them had acknowledged, but both of them felt. Why? She whispered. Why do we matter so much to you? Moretti was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to Arya. Because when I look at her, I see a second chance, a possibility I thought died with Sophia. And when I look at you, he stood abruptly, putting distance between them. You remind me that there are still things worth protecting in this world, things that aren't corrupted or compromised, things that deserve better than what I am. You're not. Don't. His voice was harsh. Don't try to make me into something I'm not. I'm a criminal, Ms. Cross. I hurt people for profit. I've ordered deaths, ruined lives, built an empire on suffering. The fact that I'm choosing to protect you doesn't redeem any of that. I wasn't trying to redeem you. I was trying to say you're not just the worst things you've done. Moretti laughed, but there was no humor in it, spoken like someone who doesn't know what my worst things are. He moved toward the door, then stopped. The new security team arrives this afternoon. I've asked Rosa to brief you on the updated protocols. And Ms. Cross? Starting today, you don't go anywhere without at least 2 guards. Not the gardens, not the library, nowhere. I can't risk it. He left before she could respond. Lena sat there, holding Arya, feeling the walls of her gilded cage closing in. The new security team was unlike anything Lena had experienced. The guards she'd grown accustomed to were professionals, certainly, but these newcomers were something else entirely. They moved with military precision, spoke in clipped tactical jargon, and transformed the estate into what Rosa quietly called a defensible position. The head of security was a woman named Catherine Drake, 40s, scarred, with eyes that had seen things Lena couldn't imagine. She briefed Lena in the sitting room that evening while Arya slept. Threat assessment indicates elevated risk of incursion within the next 72 hours, Drake said without preamble. Mr. Moretti believes the Kozlovs will test our defenses before committing to full assault. My team is prepared for multiple scenarios. Multiple scenarios? Lena repeated. You mean ways they might try to kill us? Ways they might try to breach security. Killing is only one objective. Kidnapping, intimidation, intelligence gathering, all are possibilities. Drake's expression didn't change. My job is to ensure none of those scenarios succeed. Your job is to follow protocols without deviation. What protocols? Drake handed her a laminated card. Panic button locations throughout your wing. If you press 1, my team responds within 30 seconds. Stay-in-place procedures if we detect external threats. Evacuation routes if the estate is compromised. And most importantly, if I or any member of my team gives you a direct order, you follow it immediately, without question. Lena studied the card, her mouth dry. This is insane. I'm a single mother. 2 weeks ago, my biggest problem was paying rent. Now I'm memorizing evacuation routes? 2 weeks ago, you weren't Victor Moretti's declared family. Now you are. Drake's tone softened fractionally. I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 5 years. He doesn't make declarations lightly. If he says you're under his protection, he means it absolutely. My team will die before we let anyone reach you or your daughter. That's not hyperbole. That's our job. After Drake left, Lena stood at the window, watching security personnel patrol the grounds with military efficiency. Floodlights had been installed, cameras upgraded, defensive positions established. The beautiful estate she'd been living in was becoming a fortress. She should have been terrified, should have grabbed Arya and run despite the danger. But instead, she felt something else, something that scared her more than the Kozlov family. She felt protected, safe. Like for the first time in her life, someone was actually fighting for her instead of abandoning her. And that feeling was more dangerous than any external threat. Victor Moretti didn't return to the estate for 3 days. Rosa reported that he was managing the situation in the city, which Lena understood to mean preparing for war. But on the 4th morning, he appeared at breakfast, looking haggard but grimly satisfied. We struck first, he told Lena without preamble. Hit 2 of the Kozlov family's major operations last night. Weapons shipment and money laundering front. Both destroyed, minimal casualties on our side. Lena set down her coffee. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what's happening, what I'm doing to protect you. He sat across from her, his exhaustion evident. The Kozlovs will retaliate, probably within the next 48 hours. Drake's team is ready, but I wanted you to understand, this is real now. The danger isn't theoretical anymore. It was never theoretical to me, Lena said quietly. I've been living in fear since the moment you walked into that hospital. I know, and I'm sorry. The apology seemed to cost him something. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. Sorry that protecting you requires violence. Sorry that your daughter's first weeks of life are happening in a war zone. Then end it. Find another way. There is no other way. The Kozlovs see you as leverage against me. As long as they believe killing you would hurt me, they'll keep trying. The only solution is to hurt them so badly that they can't afford to keep fighting. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. The dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands, usually so controlled, trembled slightly around his coffee cup. This was destroying him too. "When does it stop?" she asked. "When do you get to stop fighting?" "I don't know. Maybe never." He met her eyes. "This is my life, Miss Cross. Violence and strategy and endless calculation. I was born into this world, raised in it, shaped by it. I don't know how to be anything else. You could try." "Could I?" "Walk away from everything I've built, everyone who depends on me, every obligation and alliance? Even if I wanted to, and I'm not sure I do, the consequences would be catastrophic. People would die. Territories would collapse into chaos. My enemies would hunt me until they found me." "So you're trapped too." Moretti smiled sadly. "We're all trapped, Miss Cross. The only difference is some of us chose our cages." Arya woke then, her cry breaking the heavy moment. Lena went to the nursery, feeling Moretti's eyes on her back. When she returned with the baby, he was standing by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. "May I hold her?" he asked quietly. It was the first time he'd requested direct contact. Lena hesitated, then nodded. Moretti took Arya with surprising gentleness, supporting her head properly, holding her against his chest with the kind of careful attention that spoke of muscle memory. "You're good at this," Lena observed. "I had practice, a long time ago." He looked down at Arya, his expression transforming into something Lena had never seen before, pure, unguarded tenderness. "Sophia was 3 months old when she started smiling at me. Not at anyone else, just me. Her mother used to joke that I'd spoiled her, that she knew I was the easy mark." "Tell me about her." "About Sophia." Moretti was quiet for so long Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Then, still looking at Arya, he began to speak. "She had her mother's eyes, gray-green, like the ocean. She'd stare at me while I held her, completely focused, like she was trying to figure out what I was. Elena said she had my stubbornness. Once she decided she wanted something, she'd scream until she got it." His voice cracked slightly. "She just started laughing. Real laughs, not just reflex. The car accident happened 2 days after I recorded her laughing for the first time. I still have that recording. I haven't been able to listen to it in 15 years. Lena felt tears burning her eyes. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine losing Arya." "Don't imagine it. Never imagine it. The moment you do, the fear becomes paralyzing." He looked up at her, and his eyes were wet. "That's why I'm fighting so hard, Miss Cross. Not because of obligation or strategy or guilt, but because I know exactly what it feels like to fail at protecting what matters, and I can't survive that feeling again." Before Lena could respond, Arya grabbed Moretti's finger, wrapping her tiny hand around it with infant strength. He froze, staring at the small hand holding his, and something broke in his expression. Not weakness, but release, like a dam giving way. "She's holding on to me," he whispered. "Babies do that. It's a reflex." "I know, but it's been so long since—" He closed his eyes, breathing carefully. When he opened them again, he'd regained control. "I should go. Strategy meeting in an hour. The Kozlovs are moving assets and we need to anticipate their response." He handed Arya back to Lena, but his finger lingered in the baby's grip for a moment longer than necessary. Then he left, moving quickly, like he was fleeing something he couldn't fight. Lena stood there, holding her daughter, understanding with absolute clarity that Victor Moretti was no longer protecting them out of obligation. He was protecting them because he'd already lost his heart to them. The retaliation came at 2 a.m, 3 days later. Lena woke to alarms and shouting. Arya was screaming, terrified by the sudden noise. Before Lena could process what was happening, Drake burst through the door with 2 team members. "Breach at the north perimeter. Stay in place protocol. Move to the safe room, now." The safe room turned out to be a reinforced panic room hidden behind the bedroom closet. Drake ushered them inside, a space about 10 by 10 feet, lined with supplies, communication equipment, and what looked like enough weapons to start a small war. "What's happening?" Lena demanded, trying to calm Arya while her own heart raced. 4 hostiles breached the north wall using explosives. My team engaged. Situation is contained, but Mr. Moretti ordered safe room protocols for all principals. Drake was listening to something through her earpiece, her expression intense. Hostiles neutralized. 2 casualties on our side, non-fatal. Perimeter is secure. Neutralized means dead, Drake said bluntly. 3 dead, 1 in custody for interrogation. Mr. Moretti is en route from the city. Lena sank onto the safe room's bench, still holding Arya. The baby was calming down, her cries subsiding into hiccups. The adrenaline crash hit Lena hard, shaking hands, nausea, the horrible understanding that people had just died trying to reach her. "This is insane," she whispered. "People are dying because of me." "People are dying because the Kozlovs chose violence," Drake corrected. "You're just the excuse. If it wasn't you, it would be something else. That's how families like the Kozlovs operate." "How can you be so calm about it?" "Because panic gets you killed. Calm keeps you alive." Drake's earpiece crackled. "Copy that. Miss Cross, Mr. Moretti wants to speak with you. Video call." She handed Lena a tablet. Victor Moretti's face filled the screen. He was in a car, city lights blurring behind him. "Are you hurt?" His voice was tight with controlled fury. "We're fine. Scared, but fine. Drake got you to the safe room in time." "Yes, everyone was very efficient." Lena looked at Drake, who'd moved to give them privacy. "Victor, people died tonight. 4 people who came to kill you and take Arya. Their deaths were justified." Your people. Drake said 2 of your guards were hurt." Something in Moretti's expression softened. "Wounded, not killed. They'll recover. And they knew the risks when they signed on. This is what they're paid for. To die for strangers? To protect what I tell them to protect. And you're not strangers anymore, Ms. Cross. Not to them, and certainly not to me." He paused, glancing at something off-screen. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Kozlov family just made their biggest mistake. They attacked my home, came after my family. That changes everything." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done the moment Daniel stole from me. I'm going to end this, permanently." His eyes were cold, calculating. "Stay in the safe room until I arrive. I need to see you and Arya with my own eyes before I can think straight." The call ended. Lena looked at the tablet, then at Drake, who was checking weapon loads with professional efficiency. "He called us his family," Lena said quietly. "Yes, he did." Drake didn't look up from her work. "That means something coming from Mr. Moretti. He doesn't use that word lightly. But we're not his family. What you are is complicated. What he believes you are is simpler. And in this world, what Victor Moretti believes becomes reality." Drake finally looked at her. "He lost his family once. He won't survive losing another, which means this war just became total. The Kozlovs should have left you alone." Moretti arrived exactly 20 minutes later. He came into the safe room still wearing his coat, moving straight to Lena and Arya without acknowledging anyone else. He didn't ask permission, just pulled them both into his arms, holding them with desperate intensity. "You're okay," he said against Lena's hair. "You're both okay." Lena felt his heart racing against her, felt the tremor in his hands. This wasn't the controlled crime boss or the strategic mastermind. This was a man who'd been terrified. "We're okay," she confirmed. "Drake protected us." He pulled back slightly, looking at Drake. "Casualty report?" "Martinez took shrapnel to the leg. Kowalski has a concussion. Both stable. All 4 hostiles neutralized, 1 alive for interrogation. Kozlov family signature on the weapons and tactics. This was their team." "Where's the survivor?" "Basement holding, waiting for you." Moretti's expression hardened. He looked at Lena. "I need to question him. It won't be pleasant. Stay in the safe room until I'm finished. Then we'll talk." "Victor, not now." His voice was gentle but firm. "I need to do this while I'm still angry enough to get answers. Trust me." He left before she could argue. Drake sealed the safe room door, leaving Lena alone with Arya and her thoughts. She didn't want to imagine what Moretti meant by question. Didn't want to know what happened in that basement, but she understood with cold clarity that the man who'd held her and Arya with such tenderness was the same man who was about to torture information from a captive. And the most terrifying part was that she wasn't sure she wanted him to stop. 2 hours later, Moretti returned. His hands were clean, his clothes unchanged. But something in his eyes had altered. He'd crossed a line, done something that couldn't be undone. The Kozlovs sent 6 teams tonight. he said without preamble. Ours was the first target. The others hit my warehouses, distribution centers, and a restaurant I own. Coordinated assault meant to cripple my operations. Did it work? No, we were ready. They lost 37 men, we lost 4. The strategic advantage is now entirely mine. He sat beside her on the safe room bench, suddenly looking exhausted. The man I questioned gave me names, locations, operational details, enough to dismantle the Kozlov family's entire North American operation. What will you do with that information? Use it. Tomorrow night, I'm moving against every Kozlov asset simultaneously. By this time next week, they won't have the resources to threaten you or anyone else. Lena adjusted Arya, who had finally fallen asleep despite the chaos. And then what? Another family fills the vacuum, and we start this all over again? No, because I'm going to make an example of the Kozlovs that will terrify every family in North America. I'm going to show them what happens when you threaten what's mine. He looked at her, his eyes intense. This ends, Ms. Cross. One way or another, this ends soon. I don't want you to become a monster because of us. Moretti laughed bitterly. I was already a monster. I'm just finally pointing that monstrousness in a direction that matters. He reached out, touching Arya's small hand with one finger. The baby stirred but didn't wake, her tiny fingers flexing in sleep. When this is over, he said quietly, when you're safe and the threat is eliminated, I'm going to ask you to stay. Not because of the contract or the danger or any practical reason, but because somewhere in the past few weeks, you and Arya became the only good things in my life. And I'm selfish enough to want to keep good things when I find them. Lena's breath caught. Victor, you don't have to answer now, or ever if you don't want to, but I needed you to know. Whatever happens in the next few days, whatever you see me do or hear about me doing, it's all in service of keeping you safe, of earning the right to ask you to stay. He stood, moving toward the door. Drake will take you back to your rooms. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. After he left, Lena sat in the safe room, holding her daughter, feeling the weight of everything unsaid between them. Victor Moretti was going to war for her, was willing to destroy an entire criminal family to keep her and Arya safe. And somewhere in the chaos and violence and fear, she'd stopped seeing him as her captor and started seeing him as something far more dangerous. She'd started seeing him as someone she could love, and that realization terrified her more than any external threat ever could. The morning after the attack, the estate felt different. Guards patrolled with weapons visible instead of concealed. Construction crews worked on reinforcing the damaged north wall. The illusion of peaceful sanctuary had shattered, replaced by the stark reality of what Victor Moretti's world actually looked like. Lena stood at her bedroom window, watching workers repair blast damage, while Arya slept in her bassinet. She hadn't slept at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the alarms, the shouting, the distant gunfire. She kept replaying the moment Drake had burst through her door, the efficiency with which they'd been moved to safety, the casual way Drake had announced that people were dead. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Rosa entered with breakfast, but her usual warmth was muted. How are you holding up, dear? I don't know. Is that a normal answer? Rosa set the tray down, then surprised Lena by pulling her into a brief, fierce hug. There's nothing normal about what you're going through, but you're stronger than you think. You got through last night. You kept Arya calm. You didn't fall apart. I wanted to, Lena admitted. I wanted to grab her and run and never look back. But you didn't. You trusted Mr. Moretti's people to protect you, and they did. Rosa released her, smoothing Lena's hair with maternal efficiency. That takes courage. Or stupidity. I'm not sure which. With Mr. Moretti, those are often the same thing. Rosa moved to the window, looking out at the repairs. He left early this morning. Didn't say where he was going, but he took his entire primary team. Whatever he's planning, it's happening today. Lena's stomach nodded. Did he say when he'd be back? Tonight, if everything goes according to plan. Tomorrow, if it doesn't. Rosa turned back to face her. He left instructions for Drake to move you and Arya to a secondary location if he's not back by midnight. Somewhere even more secure than here. There's somewhere more secure than this? Mr. Moretti has contingencies for his contingencies, dear. It's how he survived this long. Rosa hesitated, then added, He also left something for you, in his study. He said you could read it or burn it, your choice. After Rosa left, Lena fed Arya and tried to eat breakfast, but the food tasted like ash. Her mind kept circling back to what Victor had said in the safe room. He was going to ask her to stay, not because of contracts or danger, but because he wanted her to. And the terrifying truth was that some part of her wanted to say yes. She waited until mid-morning, then asked Drake to watch Arya while she went to Victor's study. The room looked the same as always, dark wood, leather furniture, walls of books. But on the desk sat a sealed envelope with her name written in Victor's precise handwriting. Lena picked it up, feeling the weight of folded paper inside. For a long moment, she considered Rose's words. Read it or burn it. Both options felt dangerous in different ways. She opened it. The letter was written in the same careful script as her name on the envelope. No date, no preamble, just words that felt like they'd been carved from something vital. Ms. Cross, if you're reading this, it means I didn't come back from today's operation. Drake has orders to move you and Arya to a safe location in Canada, along with enough money to start over anywhere in the world. All legal documents linking Arya to me will be destroyed. You'll be free of this life, free of my world, free of every obligation I forced upon you. I want you to know that keeping you here was never about possession or control. It was about keeping you alive long enough to give you real choices. If I failed at that, if I've died trying to protect you, then at least I failed doing something that mattered. You asked me once why you and Arya became so important to me. The answer is simpler than you might think. When I look at her, I see possibility instead of loss. When I look at you, I see strength that hasn't been corrupted by compromise. You survived poverty, abandonment, pregnancy alone, and you still chose to fight for your daughter instead of giving up. That kind of courage is rare in my world. That kind of goodness is almost extinct. I know I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you if you knew the full extent of them. But being around you and Arya has reminded me that there are still things worth protecting beyond power and territory. There are still moments worth fighting for that have nothing to do with strategy. If I survive today, I'm going to ask you to stay, to build something real with me, something that isn't based on fear or obligation. I know that's selfish. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking anyway because somewhere in these past few weeks, I started hoping again. And hope is more dangerous than any enemy I've ever faced. If I don't survive, then please remember me as someone who tried to do one good thing before the end, protect Arya. Give her the life she deserves, and don't let my world touch her unless she chooses it for herself. You deserved better than this situation. You deserved better than me. But I'm grateful I got to know you, even under these circumstances. You reminded me what it feels like to be human. Whatever you decide, you'll have my support and my protection for as long as I can provide it. You owe me nothing. You never did. Victor. Lena read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't the controlled crime boss or the strategic mastermind. This was a man preparing for death, leaving behind the truth he couldn't speak out loud. He loved them. Maybe he didn't use that word. Maybe he buried it under talk of protection and hope and gratitude. But the emotion underneath was unmistakable. And she realized with startling clarity that she loved him too. Not the monster everyone feared, but the man who held Arya with such gentleness, who built monuments to his dead family, who was willing to destroy an empire to keep 2 strangers safe. She folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her pocket. Then she left the study and found Drake in the security office, monitoring multiple screens showing every angle of the estate. I need to talk to Victor, Lena said. Is there a way to reach him? Drake didn't look away from the screens. He's in the field. Communication blackout until the operation concludes. When will that be? Unknown. Could be hours, could be days. Drake finally glanced at her, and something in her expression softened fractionally. He left you a letter. I read it. Then you know he's not expecting to come back. Lena's breath caught. You think he's going to die today? I think he's going into a situation where death is a real possibility, and he's made peace with that. Drake turned back to the screens. Mr. Moretti doesn't do anything halfway. If he's decided the only way to protect you is to destroy the Kozlov family completely, then he'll keep pushing until either they're eliminated or he is. There's no middle ground with him. That's insane. That's love, Ms. Cross. At least that's what love looks like in our world. Absolute commitment backed by absolute force. Lena sank into a chair, feeling the weight of everything crushing down on her. I can't just sit here waiting to find out if he's alive or dead. That's exactly what you're going to do, because if you leave this estate, If you expose yourself and Arya to danger, then everything he's fighting for becomes meaningless. The best thing you can do for Mr. Moretti is stay safe. Let him fight without worrying about whether you're protected. The logic was sound, but it felt like cowardice. Lena wanted to do something, anything, to help. But what could she do? She had no training, no weapons, no understanding of the violence that was happening in her name. So she waited. Hours crawled past. Lena tried to distract herself with Arya, with books, with anything that would stop her mind from imagining worst-case scenarios. Rosa brought lunch and dinner, both of which Lena barely touched. Drake's team maintained their vigil, professional and silent. As midnight approached, Lena stood at her bedroom window, staring at the darkness beyond the estate's floodlights. Somewhere out there, Victor was fighting, possibly dying, definitely risking everything for people who'd been strangers a month ago. At 11:47 p.m., Drake knocked on her door. "Pack essentials for you and Arya. We're moving to the secondary location in 13 minutes. "He's not coming back," Lena whispered. "Protocol is protocol." Mr. Moretti was very clear about timing. Lena was throwing clothes into a bag when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Ms. Cross?" Victor's voice was rough, strained, but alive. "I'm 10 minutes out. Tell Drake to stand down the evacuation." Relief flooded through her so intensely she had to sit down. "You're okay?" Define okay. "I'm alive, conscious, and coming home." That's sufficient. A pause, then. "Is Arya—" "She's fine. We're both fine." "Victor, what happened?" "I'll explain when I get there. I need to see you first. Need to—" His voice cracked slightly. "Just stay there, please." The call ended. Lena relayed the message to Drake, who confirmed through her own channels that Moretti's convoy was indeed approaching. The tension in the security team eased fractionally, but they remained alert. Lena went downstairs to the main entrance, ignoring Drake's suggestion that she wait in her room. She needed to see him, needed confirmation that he was really alive. The convoy arrived 12 minutes later, 3 SUVs, all showing damage. Bullet holes, cracked windows, dented panels. The vehicles looked like they'd driven through a war zone. Victor emerged from the center SUV, and Lena's breath caught. He was covered in blood, his shirt torn, his face bruised, moving with the careful stiffness of someone in pain. But he was walking, was alive, was here. He saw her standing in the doorway and stopped. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the distance. Then he moved, closing the space between them with desperate urgency. He didn't speak, just pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking, felt the rapid hammer of his heart, felt something wet against her hair that might have been blood or tears or both. "You're alive," she whispered against his chest. "So are you. That's all that matters." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands framing her cheeks with surprising gentleness, despite the blood on them. "I need to tell you something. Before I clean up, before I debrief my team, before anything else, I need you to know, Victor, I read your file when this started. Every detail of your life that I could find. Single mother, abandoned, broke, alone. I thought you were just another complication, another problem to solve, but you're not." His eyes were intense, desperate. "You're the first thing in 15 years that's made me want to be better instead of just more powerful. And I can't let you leave without knowing that." Lena's vision blurred with tears. "I read your letter. I meant every word." "I know." She reached up, touching his bruised face carefully. "Victor, people died tonight because of us. People died tonight because the Kozlovs chose violence. Don't take that burden. It's mine to carry." His jaw tightened. The Kozlov family is finished. Their leadership is dead. Their operations dismantled. Their assets seized or destroyed. It's over, Lena. The threat is over. He'd used her first name. In all these weeks, he'd maintained formality, called her Ms., crossed like she was a business associate. But now, covered in blood and exhausted from battle, he'd dropped the pretense. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you decide. The contract is fulfilled. The danger is eliminated. You're free to go anywhere, do anything, with full financial support for you and Arya for life, or—" He hesitated, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Or you stay, not because you're afraid or obligated, but because you choose to." Lena thought about the letter in her pocket, about the past month of fear and confusion and unexpected connection, about the way Victor held Arya like she was made of glass and dreams, about the man who'd gone to war for strangers and come back victorious but broken. "I need to know something first," she said. "If I stay, what are we? What is this?" "Whatever you want it to be. Whatever you can live with." His hand slid from her face to her shoulders, his touch careful despite his intensity. "I'm not asking you to marry me or become some mob wife out of a movie. I'm asking for a chance, to prove I can be someone worth staying for, to build something real that isn't based on fear." "You're still a criminal." "Yes." "You're still going to do things I'll hate." "Probably." "And you're still carrying enough trauma to sink a ship." "Definitely." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm a terrible choice, Lena. You should absolutely take the money and run. But I'll spend every day trying to deserve you anyway. And I'll protect you and Arya with everything I have. And I'll never, ever take you for granted." He leaned his forehead against hers. "I know it's not enough. I know I'm asking too much. But I'm asking anyway." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. Every rational part of her brain screamed to leave, to take Arya and disappear into a normal life far from violence and danger. But her heart, her stubborn, foolish heart, was already decided. "I'll stay," she whispered. "Not forever. Not without conditions. But I'll stay, and we'll figure out what this is together." Victor's breath released in a rush. "You mean it?" "I read your letter 3 times trying to find a reason to run. Couldn't find one strong enough." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I'm terrified, Victor. Terrified of what it means to choose this life. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." He kissed her then, gentle despite the desperation behind it, careful like she might break. His lips were split and bleeding, and he tasted like copper and hope. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you." "Probably not. But I'm choosing it anyway." She touched his face again, tracing the bruise forming under his eye. "Now go clean up and let a doctor look at you. You look like you got hit by a truck." 3 trucks, actually, and a building." He managed a real smile. "But I won. We won." Rosa appeared with medical supplies and started directing Victor toward the infirmary. He went without protest, but kept looking back at Lena like he was afraid she'd disappear. Drake approached once he was gone, her expression unreadable. "You're staying." "Yes." "You understand what that means? The target on your back doesn't disappear just because the Kozlovs are gone. There will always be another threat, another family, another crisis." "I know. And you're choosing this anyway." Lena looked down at Arya, who'd slept through the entire conversation, peaceful and perfect. "I'm choosing him, for now. We'll see what happens next." Drake nodded slowly. "He's going to propose within 6 months, probably less, just warning you." "How do you know?" "Because I've worked for him for 5 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. That man would burn down the world for you, Ms. Cross. Make sure you're ready for what that means." Over the next few hours, the full scope of what Victor had done became clear. He'd struck every major Kozlov operation simultaneously, 27 locations across 3 states. The coordination had been surgical, the execution brutal. By the time the sun rose, the Kozlov family's North American presence was completely eliminated. The cost had been high. Victor had lost 8 men, with another 15 wounded, but he'd won decisively, sending a message to every other family that his protection was absolute. Lena sat in the infirmary while a doctor stitched a gash on Victor's shoulder. He'd refused anesthetic, claimed he needed to stay alert. She watched him endure the pain without flinching, this man who'd orchestrated mass violence and come home to hold her with bleeding hands. "Tell me about Daniel," she said suddenly. "Did you find him?" Victor's expression hardened. "He's dead. Killed during the raid on the Montreal safe house. Tried to fight his way out and failed." "Good," Lena said, surprising herself with her vehemence. "He deserved it for what he did to us." "To you," Victor corrected. "He did this to you. You and Arya. I'm just the collateral damage." "You're not collateral damage. You're—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "What am I, Lena?" She met his eyes. "You're the man who saved us. Who gave us a home when we had nothing. who went to war for strangers and came back broken but victorious. She took his hand carefully, avoiding the doctor's work. "You're the man I'm choosing to trust." The doctor finished stitching and left them alone. Victor pulled Lena close, tucking her against his uninjured side. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly. "I can't be normal. I can't give you a white picket fence and boring stability. My life is dangerous, complicated, and sometimes ugly. If you stay, that becomes your life too." "I know. And I need you to tell me if it becomes too much. If you wake up one day and realize you've made a mistake, I'll let you go, Lena. I won't trap you, won't manipulate you. You'll always have the choice to leave. What if I don't want to leave? Then I'll spend every day trying to make sure you never regret staying." They sat in silence, exhausted and bloody, and holding on to each other like lifelines. Outside, dawn was breaking over the estate. The damaged wall was being repaired. The guards were changing shifts. Life was continuing, adapting, moving forward despite the violence. 3 days later, Victor called Lena to his study. She'd been expecting this. Some final conversation, some closing of the book on their strange arrangement. Instead, she found him at his desk with legal documents spread across the surface. "I want to adopt Arya," he said without preamble. "Legally, officially, not as a strategic move or protective measure, as her actual father." Lena's breath caught. "Victor, I know I'm not her biological father. I know I have no real claim to her, but I love her, Lena. I've loved her since that first moment I held her in my study and she grabbed my finger. I want to be her father. I want to give her my name, my protection, my everything." He stood, moving around the desk. "But only if you agree. Only if you want that for her." Lena thought about the past month, about the way Victor looked at Arya with such tenderness, about the music box that played Elena's lullaby, about the nursery he'd prepared before they ever arrived, about the war he'd fought to keep them safe. "She needs a father," Lena said slowly. "A real one. Someone who'll be there, who'll protect her, who'll love her unconditionally. I can be that. I want to be that." "Then yes, adopt her. Be her father. Give her what I can't give her alone." Victor's control finally broke. He pulled Lena into his arms and held her while he cried, silent, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken. She held him back, understanding that this wasn't just about Arya. This was about Sophia, about Elena, about all the family he'd lost and the second chance he never expected. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for trusting me with her. Thank you for wanting her, for wanting us." They stood there in his study, holding each other while the documents waited. Outside, the estate was secure. The threats were eliminated. The war was over. But something new was beginning. Something that scared Lena as much as it excited her. A family. Not built on blood or biology, but on choice and commitment, and the desperate hope that broken people could build something beautiful together. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be theirs. And that was enough. The adoption proceedings took 3 weeks, but with Victor Moretti's legal team and Judge Castellano's cooperation, what should have been a months-long process was compressed into something resembling efficiency. Lena sat in the judge's chambers with Arya in her arms, while lawyers shuffled papers and spoke in the formal language of legal transformation. "Do you, Lena Marie Cross, consent to the adoption of your daughter, Arya Cross, by Victor Adrian Moretti, understanding that this grants him full parental rights and responsibilities?" Lena looked at Victor, who sat beside her in a suit that made him look more like a businessman than a crime boss. His eyes were fixed on Arya, and the expression on his face was one of complete devotion. "I do," Lena said clearly. "I consent." Judge Castellano signed the documents with a flourish. "Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant this adoption. Arya Cross is now legally Arya Moretti, daughter of Victor Adrian Moretti and Lena Marie Cross. Congratulations." Victor's hand found Lena's, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, feeling the weight of what they'd just done. Arya was legally his daughter now, not through biology or deception, but through choice. Through love. In the car ride back to the estate, Victor held Arya while Lena watched the city slide past the tinted windows. Everything looked different now. The same streets, the same buildings, but transformed by context. This was Victor's city, the empire he'd built and defended, and she and Arya were part of it now. "What are you thinking?" Victor asked. That I just gave you legal custody of my daughter, and I'm not even scared. Should you be scared? Lena turned to look at him. Probably. Normal people would be terrified. But I keep thinking about that night you held her in your study, the way you looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. You've looked at her that way every day since. How can I be scared of someone who loves my daughter like that? Our daughter, Victor corrected softly. She's ours now. The word settled over them like a blanket. Ours. A family built not from blood but from deliberate choice, from the ashes of tragedy and the hope of redemption. When they arrived at the estate, Rosa was waiting with champagne and a cake she'd baked specifically for the occasion. The household staff had been informed, and their congratulations felt genuine. Drake even cracked a smile, which Lena had learned was Drake's equivalent of throwing a parade. That night, after Arya was asleep in her nursery, Victor found Lena in the library. She'd been spending more time there, drawn to the books that revealed glimpses of who Victor had been before violence became his primary language. I have something for you, he said, holding out a small velvet box. Lena's heart stuttered. Victor, if that's a ring, it's not. Open it. Inside was a key, ornate and old-fashioned. Lena looked at him questioningly. It's the master key to the estate, he explained. Every door, every room, every space, including my private wing, my office, my safe. There are no locked doors between us anymore, Lena. No secrets, no barriers. You have access to everything. Lena turned the key over in her palm, understanding the weight of what he was offering. This wasn't just about physical access. This was trust, complete and absolute. Why? She asked. Because you chose to stay when you could have left. Because you trusted me with Arya. Because somewhere in the past month, you stopped being a complication and became the most important person in my life. He moved closer, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. I want you to know everything, Lena. The good, the bad, the ugly. I want you to decide whether you can live with who I really am, not just the version I show you. I already know who you are. You know pieces. You don't know about the money laundering operations, the political corruption, the people I've hurt to maintain power. You don't know the full scope of what I do. Lena set the key on the table beside her. Then tell me, right now, everything you think might make me leave. Victor was quiet for a long moment, as if gathering courage. Then he began to speak, and Lena listened while he laid bare the machinery of his empire. He told her about the businesses that were fronts, the politicians in his pocket, the violence he'd authorized in the name of territory and profit. He told her about men he'd killed personally, about families destroyed by his decisions, about the corruption that touched every part of his world. He didn't justify or excuse. He simply presented the truth and waited for her judgment. When he finished, Lena felt like she'd been holding her breath for hours. The man she'd been falling in love with was also responsible for things that should horrify her, and they did horrify her in the abstract. But when she looked at him, this broken, honest, desperate man who'd saved her and loved her daughter and offered her everything, including the truth, she couldn't find the disgust she thought she should feel. I should leave, she said quietly. I should take Arya and run from all of this. I know, but I'm not going to. Victor's eyes widened. Why not? Because you're not just the worst things you've done. You're also the man who plays lullabies for my daughter and reads philosophy in your spare time and cries when you think no one's watching. You're complicated and broken and, yes, morally compromised, but you're also trying to be better, for us. She stood, moving closer to him. I'm not saying I approve of everything you do. I'm saying I choose to stay anyway and help you find better ways to be powerful. That's naive. Probably, but it's my choice to be naive. She took his hands, feeling the calluses and scars. I don't need you to be perfect, Victor. I need you to be honest, to keep choosing us even when it's hard, to let me in instead of protecting me from uncomfortable truths. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her with desperate intensity. I'll try. I can't promise I'll succeed, but I'll try. They stood there in the library surrounded by books and history, making promises neither of them was sure they could keep, but both were determined to try. The next week settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lena cared for Arya while Victor managed his empire with slightly less violence than before. He started coming home for dinner, started asking Lena's opinion on business decisions, started including her in the life he'd kept separate for so long. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments about his methods, disagreements about acceptable risk, moments when Lena saw the darkness in him and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But there were also moments of unexpected joy. Victor teaching Arya to grasp his finger, family dinners with Rosa fussing over everyone, quiet evenings in the library where they'd read side by side while Arya played on a blanket between them. One night, 3 months after the adoption, Lena woke to find Victor's side of the bed empty. They'd been sharing a room for the past month, a gradual progression that felt natural rather than forced. She found him in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with Arya asleep against his chest. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. "I keep thinking about how close I came to losing this, to losing both of you." He looked up at her and his eyes were wet. "Sometimes I wake up convinced it's all a dream, that I'm still alone in this house with nothing but ghosts and regrets." Lena crossed to him, kneeling beside the chair. "It's not a dream. We're real. This is real. I don't know how to be good at this, at being a father, a partner. I only know how to be dangerous." "Then learn. We'll learn together." She touched his face gently. "You don't have to be perfect, Victor. You just have to be present." He kissed her then, careful not to wake Arya, and the kiss tasted like hope and healing. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. Lena's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because of obligation or protection or strategy, because I love you. Because I want to build a real family with you. Because waking up next to you is the only time I feel like I'm doing something right. Victor, you don't have to answer now. I just needed you to know. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Waiting, hoping." Lena looked at him, this dangerous, broken, devoted man who'd given her everything, including the choice to say no. She thought about the past 4 months, about the journey from terrified stranger to willing partner, about the family they'd built from impossible circumstances. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said. "Ask me when we've had time to see if this works outside of crisis mode. Ask me when I'm sure this is love and not just survival instinct." Victor smiled, and it was the most genuine expression she'd ever seen on his face. "I can wait 6 months. I'd wait 6 years if that's what you needed. You might not have to wait that long, but I will, however long it takes." They put Arya back in her crib together, tucking her in with the kind of coordinated efficiency that only came from practice. Then they went back to bed, wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Lena felt safe enough to sleep deeply. The threats didn't disappear entirely. There were still rivals, still conflicts, still moments when Victor's world demanded violence. But he consulted Lena now, listened to her perspective, sometimes even changed course based on her input. She didn't have illusions about reforming him completely, but she could see him trying to be better, trying to build something that wouldn't destroy everything he loved. Drake noticed the change too. One afternoon, while watching Lena play with Arya in the gardens, Drake commented, "He's different with you. Softer. I wasn't sure that was possible." "He's still dangerous," Lena said. "Of course. But dangerous doesn't mean incapable of love. Some of the most dangerous men I've known were also the most devoted to their families." Drake paused. "He's going to keep asking you to marry him until you say yes, you know. It's not a matter of if, just when." "I know. And? And I'm going to say yes, just not yet. I need to be sure this is real, that we can sustain it beyond the drama that brought us together." "That's smart. He respects that." Drake smiled slightly. "But between you and me, he's already planning the wedding. Has been for weeks. I've seen the Pinterest boards." Lena laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. "Victor Moretti has Pinterest boards for our wedding?" Turns out dangerous crime bosses can be surprisingly sentimental about romance. 5 months after the adoption, Lena found Victor in his study staring at a photograph. She recognized it immediately, Elena and baby Sophia, taken in the gardens she'd designed. The photograph that had once lived in a drawer now sat on his desk in a silver frame. "I used to hide this," he said without looking up. "Looking at it hurt too much." "What changed?" "You did. Arya did. You reminded me that remembering doesn't have to mean drowning." He turned to face her. "I spent 15 years trying to forget them because the pain was unbearable, but you taught me that I can hold both, Grief for what I lost and gratitude for what I found. They don't cancel each other out. Lena moved to his side, looking at the photograph. Tell me about them. Really tell me. Not the sanitized version, the real one. So he did. He told her about Elena's terrible singing voice and Sophia's hatred of green vegetables. He told her about fights they'd had, mistakes he'd made as a young husband and father. He told her about the mundane reality of loving people instead of just mourning them. And Lena listened, understanding that this wasn't comparison or competition. This was Victor finally integrating his past with his present, making room for both families in his heart. They would have liked you, he said finally. Elena especially. She always said I needed someone who'd call me on my bullshit. I think we would have gotten along. Victor pulled her into his arms. I love you, Lena. I know I'm not supposed to say it yet. No, we're still figuring this out. But I need you to know. You and Arya, you saved me from becoming something I couldn't come back from. I love you too, Lena admitted. Even though you drive me crazy, even though your world scares me, even though I have no idea what we're doing half the time. Is that a yes to marriage? Ask me properly in 1 month and find out. He did. Exactly 1 month later, he arranged a dinner in the gardens where Elena had planted her flowers. Rosa made Lena's favorite meal. Drake managed to smile twice. And when Victor got down on one knee with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, Lena didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. Yes to all of it. The danger, the chaos, the beautiful mess of building a family with you. Yes. The wedding was small, held in the estate garden 6 weeks later. Just Rosa, Drake, a handful of trusted staff, and a judge who owed Victor enough favors to perform the ceremony personally. Arya wore a white dress and cried through the vows, which somehow made it perfect. Lena wore a simple dress, no veil, no pretense. This wasn't about spectacle. This was about making promises and meaning them. I, Victor Adrian Moretti, take you, Lena Marie Cross, to be my wife, to protect and cherish, to trust and confide in, to build a life alongside even when that life is complicated and dangerous and nothing like what either of us expected. I, Lena Marie Cross, take you, Victor Adrian Moretti, to be my husband, to challenge and support, to love and frustrate, to build a family with even though I'm still scared of what that means. They exchanged rings, simple platinum bands engraved with their wedding date. When the judge pronounced them married, Victor kissed Lena like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. That night, after the celebration, after Arya was asleep, after the last guests had left, Victor and Lena stood in the gardens looking at Elena's flowers. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For taking a chance on the worst possible choice, for seeing something worth saving in a man who'd stopped believing redemption was possible, for giving Arya a father, and me a reason to be better than I am. Lena took his hand. You gave us a home when we had nothing. You fought a war to keep us safe. You let me see every dark corner of your world and trusted me to stay anyway. I think we're even. We're not even close to even, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you anyway. They stood there in the moonlight, surrounded by flowers and security cameras, holding on to each other while Arya slept safely inside. It wasn't the life Lena had imagined. It wasn't safe or simple or anything close to normal. But it was theirs, built from chaos and choice, from tragedy and hope, from the understanding that family wasn't about biology or convenience, but about showing up and choosing each other every single day. A year passed, then 2. Arya learned to walk, to talk, to wrap both her parents around her tiny fingers. Victor's empire evolved, became slightly less violent, and significantly more legitimate under Lena's influence. He couldn't stop being who he was, but he could channel it differently, could build power through strategy instead of just force. Lena finished her degree online, started working with Rosa to manage the household, became the kind of partner Victor didn't know he needed but couldn't imagine living without. She never fully embraced his world, but she learned to navigate it, learned when to push back and when to trust his judgment. They fought sometimes, about his methods, about acceptable risk, about how to raise Arya in a world that was equal parts danger and privilege. But they also laughed, made love, built traditions, became the kind of family that was messy and real and absolutely unbreakable. On Arya's 3rd birthday, they stood in the gardens watching her chase butterflies while Rosa and Drake supervised. Victor's arm was around Lena's waist, holding her close. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Saying yes? Choosing this life? Lena thought about the scared, pregnant girl who'd given birth alone in a hospital. About the moment a stranger's name appeared on a birth certificate and changed everything. About the journey from victim to survivor to partner to wife. Every day, she admitted, and then I look at Arya calling you daddy, or I watch you try to be better because we exist, or I remember what it felt like to be alone and terrified with no one to protect us. And I realize I'd choose this exact life 1,000 times over. Even knowing what you know now, what I've done, what I'm capable of, especially knowing that, because you could have used us as leverage or discarded us as inconvenient, but you chose love instead. You chose to be a father when you didn't have to be. You chose to let us change you, even though change terrified you. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. That's worth more than safety or simplicity. That's worth everything. Victor kissed her, and after 3 years, it still felt like the first time. Like possibility and promise and the stubborn hope that broken people could build something beautiful together. Arya shrieked with delight, having caught a butterfly. Drake quickly intervened to ensure the butterfly's safe release, while Rosa laughed. And Lena thought about how far they'd all come, how a terrible mistake had become the foundation for something real. The past couldn't be changed. Daniel Cross had set events in motion that nearly destroyed them all. The Kozlovs had brought violence to their door. Victor's world would always carry darkness and danger. But standing there in Elena's gardens, watching their daughter play while surrounded by people who'd become family, Lena understood something fundamental. The past didn't have to define the future. Mistakes could become miracles. And family wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing to stay, to fight, to love, despite everything that said you shouldn't. Victor pulled her closer, resting his chin on top of her head. I love you, Lena Moretti. I love you too, Victor, even when you drive me crazy. Especially then, I hope. Especially then, she agreed. Arya ran to them, demanding to be lifted. Victor scooped her up, settling her between them, and they stood there as the sun set over the estate. A crime boss, a survivor, and a child who'd brought them together. A family forged in fire and sealed with choice. It wasn't the life anyone would have chosen in the beginning, but it was the life they'd built together, piece by piece, day by day, choosing love over fear and hope over despair. And that made it perfect. Not because it was easy or safe or anything close to normal, but because it was theirs, completely, absolutely, unshakably theirs. The baby who shouldn't have brought them together became the daughter who made them whole. The man who should have been a monster became a father who loved fiercely. The woman who should have run became the partner who stayed and fought and loved anyway. And together, they became a family that proved redemption wasn't about deserving second chances. It was about taking them when they appeared and refusing to let go no matter how hard the world tried to tear them apart. In the end, love won. Not because it was easy, but because they chose it every single day. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.